The desert winds never rested. They swept across the barren outpost in endless waves, dragging dust and grit through narrow streets lined with crumbling stone walls and patched canvas stalls. The market was alive with noise, traders shouting over one another, machines rattling, animals braying. The hot sun blazed down from the sky so bright it hurt the eyes, turning every shadow into a place of refuge. Among the crowd, Eli, a 14-year-old human boy, hurried along with a cloth sack slung over his shoulder. His dark hair was wild from the wind, his clothes patched in too many places, and his boots filled with sand. He had learned to move quickly through the market, keeping his head down, never attracting attention. Humans in alien-controlled settlements were tolerated but rarely respected. Yet something made him slow that day. At first, it was only the faint movement in the corner of his eye. Then, as he turned, he noticed her, in the shade of a broken wall. Half hidden from the busy street, a small figure crouched low. At first glance, she seemed like a lost beggar child. But when Eli stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. She wasn't human. Her skin, though smudged with dirt, carried a soft lavender glow that the sun could not dull. Strands of long, silvery white hair hung over her face, and when she looked up, her eyes shone an unnatural shade of blue, bright, deep, and trembling with fear. She was young, maybe 10 or 12, and so frail that her thin frame shook with every breath. She hugged herself tightly, as if even the heat of the desert could not chase away her shivers. For a moment, Eli simply stared. He had heard of her kind, though few humans had seen them. Some whispered that such aliens were cruel rulers who kept humans in chains. Others claimed they were untouchable nobles, born to live above ordinary people. But none of those whispers matched what he saw before him now. She looked less like a ruler, and more like a child who had lost everything. The market crowd noticed her too, but not with kindness. A few merchants glanced her way, muttered curses under their breath, and quickly looked away. Some pulled their children closer, as though even standing near her was dangerous. Nobody stopped. Nobody helped. Everyone seemed to know the risk. Eli swallowed hard. He knew it too. Alien patrols roamed the outpost constantly. If one of them saw him standing here, near her, there would be questions. And questions often ended with someone disappearing. He should walk away. He told himself this twice, 3 times, but then her eyes met his. They were huge, shining, and filled with fear so raw it rooted him to the spot. For a heartbeat, he saw past her strange skin and glowing eyes. He saw only a child, cold, hungry, terrified. And something inside him refused to leave her there. He crouched down slowly, trying not to scare her. His voice was low, careful. "Hey, you okay?" She flinched at his words, pressing back against the wall. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then, barely audible, she whispered, "They're looking for me." Eli's heart thudded. Looking for her? Who was they? The patrols? Bandits? Her own people? Before he could ask, he noticed her clutching a strip of cloth, torn and dirty, but stitched with golden thread. It looked old, like something important once, now ruined by the desert. She held it the way a starving child might hold bread. The boy glanced around. At the far end of the street, a group of armored alien enforcers were moving through the crowd. Their polished metal suits reflected the sunlight, their movement stiff and intimidating. Eli could hear their heavy boots striking the ground, see the way traders lowered their heads as they passed. His stomach tightened. If those soldiers saw her here, crouched and trembling, she wouldn't last a minute. Eli pulled off his worn desert cloak and draped it over her shoulders. She stiffened, staring at him as though she couldn't understand why he would do such a thing. The fabric was rough, but it hid her skin, her hair, her glow. "Stay quiet," he whispered firmly. "Stay close." She blinked at him, wide-eyed. Her lips trembled again. Why would a human help me? Eli had no answer. He just tightened the cloak around her small body and helped her to her feet. She was so light it felt like she might break in his hands. A sharp voice rang out from the street, one of the enforcers barking orders in their harsh tongue. The crowd shifted uneasily. Eli didn't need to understand the words to know what they meant. They were searching for someone. The The girl's small hand clutched his sleeve. Her whole body shook. Eli's heart hammered. He pulled her close, forcing his breathing steady. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know why soldiers hunted her. But he knew this much. If he left her, she was finished. And in that moment, standing between a frightened alien girl and the enforcers sweeping through the market, Eli made a choice. He would protect her. What he didn't know was that by doing so, he had just taken into his arms a secret powerful enough to shake empires. Eli guided the girl quickly through the winding alleys of the settlement, keeping his head down as patrols passed by on the main street. His desert cloak covered most of her glowing skin, but every step felt dangerous. The sound of armored boots echoed through the air, and sharp commands barked in the alien tongue sent a chill down his spine. "Stay close," he whispered again, glancing over his shoulder. She clung tightly to his sleeve, her small frame nearly stumbling with each hurried step. They reached a narrow gap between two ruined buildings, hidden from the busy marketplace. Here, the noise of traders was muffled, replaced by the faint hum of power generators and the distant clang of metal tools. Eli led her to the back of his family's storage hut, an old wooden shack patched with scrap metal, where his father kept farming equipment and spare parts of their machines. He pushed the door open and quickly pulled her inside. The air was dusty and smelled of oil and dry earth. Wooden crates lined the walls, covered with sheets of cloth. Eli shut the door behind them, his heart racing. The girl stood in the middle of the small room, clutching his cloak tightly around her shoulders. She looked so out of place, like a piece of fragile glass dropped into a pile of stones. Her wide eyes searched the shadows, as if she expected soldiers to burst in at any moment. "You'll be safe here," Eli said, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. "Nobody comes to this shed unless they're looking for work." Her lips parted as if to answer, but then she closed them again, staring at the floor. Eli frowned. She hadn't said much since he found her, just that someone was looking for her. Finally, he asked, "Why are they after you? What did you do?" The question hung in the air. The girl's small hands twisted the edge of the cloak. She seemed to wrestle with herself before whispering, "I didn't do anything." Eli tilted his head, trying to read her face. "Then why are soldiers looking for you?" Her voice was so soft it was almost lost in the creak of the wooden walls. "Because of who I am." That answer made him blink. "Who you are?" She hesitated, then pulled the torn fabric she carried, the scarf with golden thread, from beneath the cloak. She held it gently, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "This belonged to my mother," she said, her voice trembling. "She told me never to lose it, that it would remind me of where I come from." Eli leaned closer. The cloth was old, but even through the dirt and frayed edges, he could see strange patterns stitched in gold, symbols unlike anything he'd seen before. He frowned. "Your family, were they important?" The girl's eyes shimmered, but she quickly shook her head. "I can't tell you." Then, almost pleading, she added, "If they find me, they'll take me away. Please don't let them." Eli's chest tightened. He was just a boy. He didn't have weapons or soldiers or power, but the desperation in her voice was something he couldn't ignore. "You're safe," he said firmly. "I'll make sure of it." A silence fell between them. Outside, heavy boots stomped past. Voices shouted, closer this time. The girl flinched, stepping back into the corner. Eli raised a finger to his lips, urging her to stay quiet. The voices lingered outside the hut, then slowly faded as a patrol moved down the street. Only then did Eli breathe again. The girl sank to the ground, pulling the cloak around herself. For the first time, Eli noticed how thin she was. Her wrists were small, her shoulders fragile, and her face looked pale from hunger. Without thinking, he rummaged through one of the crates and pulled out a small piece of bread he had hidden earlier. "Here," he said, handing it to her. Her eyes widened. For a moment she hesitated, as though she wasn't sure she should accept it. But hunger won. She took the bread with trembling fingers and bit into it, chewing slowly. A small, grateful sound escaped her lips. Eli sat across from her, watching quietly. He didn't know what kind of trouble he was stepping into, but one thing was clear. She wasn't like the others. There was something different about her, something fragile, yet important. Finally, she lifted her eyes to his. "What's your name?" "Eli," he said simply. She nodded. "Mine is Lyra." The name hung in the air. Lyra, a name that seemed almost too delicate for the dusty, broken world around them. Before Eli could say anything more, another sound cut through the quiet. A voice outside, low and sharp, speaking in the alien tongue. This time, it wasn't passing by. It was right outside the hut. Lyra's face went pale. Eli's pulse raced. He motioned for her to stay hidden behind the crates. Then he moved toward the door, heart hammering, unsure if he was about to face a curious neighbor, or the soldiers who were hunting her. The knock on the door was heavy, sharp, and commanding. Eli froze where he stood, his hand hovering near the latch. The wood of the old storage hut trembled slightly as a second knock struck, harder this time. "Open." A deep voice barked in the alien tongue. Even without knowing all the words, Eli understood the tone. It was a soldier's order. Behind him, Lyra crouched low behind a stack of crates, clutching his cloak so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Her wide eyes shimmered with fear as she mouthed silently, "Don't let them in." Eli's mind raced. If he ignored the door, they might break it down. If he opened it, they might step inside and see her. Either way, he was trapped. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his pounding heart. Then he unlatched the door, opening it just enough to face the figure outside. An armored alien enforcer towered above him, metal plates gleaming under the midday sun. The alien's face was hidden beneath a helmet shaped like a predator's snarl. A long spear-like weapon was strapped across his back, glowing faintly with energy. The soldier's gaze swept over Eli, then past him into the dim hut. His voice was clipped and commanding. "Boy, have you seen a girl?" Eli swallowed, shaking his head quickly. "No, sir. Just me here. I was cleaning." The soldier's head tilted, as if weighing his answer. He stepped closer, and Eli's stomach twisted as heavy boots scraped across the threshold. The alien's gaze scanned the shadows. Behind the crates, Lyra pressed her hand over her mouth to stop a sound from escaping. Eli's palms grew slick with sweat. He forced himself to stand still, though every muscle screamed for him to push the soldier away. Finally, after a tense pause, the enforcer grunted. "If you see her, you report. She is dangerous." Eli nodded quickly. "Of course." The soldier lingered one last moment before stepping back and shutting the door behind him. Heavy boots echoed as he moved down the street, joining the others. Eli stood frozen, barely daring to breathe. Only when the footsteps faded did he turn back toward the crates. Lyra was trembling, her eyes wet with unshed tears. She looked like she had just escaped death itself. "They'll never stop," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They'll search every corner. They'll never rest until I'm found." Eli crouched beside her, trying to steady his voice. "Why? Why would they care so much about you?" Her gaze flickered to the scarf she carried. For the first time, she unfolded it fully, letting the golden embroidery catch the dim light of the shed. The symbols shimmered faintly, intricate patterns unlike anything Eli had ever seen. "This," she said, her voice trembling, "is the crest of my family. It marks me as one of the line." She stopped herself, biting her lip. "I shouldn't say more." Eli frowned. "Line? What line?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Royal." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Eli stared at her. He almost laughed. It sounded impossible. Royalty? Here in his dusty shed? She looked too small, too weak, too fragile. But then he remembered the way the soldiers searched, the way everyone else avoided looking at her. If she was just another runaway child, they wouldn't care this much. "You're saying you're a princess?" he asked in disbelief. Her eyes dropped to the floor. If they knew I was alive, they would use me. Or kill me. I don't matter to them. Only what I represent does. Eli's mind spun. He had expected many answers, but not this. A royal? That meant power, politics, danger, far beyond anything a boy like him was prepared to handle. But when he looked at her, shivering, clutching the scarf as though it were her last piece of home, all he saw was a scared child. "You're safe here," he said again, firmer this time. "I don't care who's chasing you. I won't let them take you." Her eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe him. "Why would you risk that? You don't even know me." Eli shrugged, though his heart still pounded. "Because you need help, and because you asked." The silence stretched, filled only by the faint whistling of the desert wind seeping through the cracks in the hut. For the first time since he found her, a faint flicker of trust softened her expression. But the moment didn't last. Outside, the shouts of soldiers rang out again. This time, they were closer, louder, more urgent. Boots thundered against the ground, and the sound of doors breaking open echoed through the streets. The patrols weren't just searching, they were raiding. Eli's breath caught. If they decided to check every building, it was only a matter of time before this shed was found. He met Lyra's eyes. "We can't stay here." Her hands gripped his cloak tighter. Then where? He didn't know. But he knew one thing. If he stayed, they'd both be caught. If he ran, maybe they had a chance. And so, with the soldiers closing in, Eli made his second reckless choice of the day. He took Lyra's hand, pulled her toward the back door, and whispered, "Come on, we run." The back door creaked as Eli pushed it open, the hinges threatening to give them away. Dusty air rushed in, carrying the sound of shouting soldiers only streets away. He grabbed Lyra's trembling hand and pulled her outside. The alley behind the storage hut was narrow and crooked, lined with broken walls and piles of discarded metal. Eli knew these paths well. He had played here as a child, ducking through holes and climbing rubble. But now every shadow seemed dangerous, every corner a trap. "Stay close," he whispered. "Don't let go." Her grip tightened around his fingers. Though her hand was small and cold, she held on with surprising strength. They slipped through the winding alleyways, Eli guiding her through cracks in the ruins and gaps between walls. Shouts echoed behind them, growing louder. Somewhere nearby, the sharp crackle had told him soldiers were forcing doors open one by one. Eli's stomach churned. If they kept searching in order, the shed they had just left would be found within minutes. He had bought them only a little time. Lyra's breathing grew ragged as they ran. She stumbled once, nearly falling, but Eli pulled her up. Her face was pale, sweat mixing with dust on her skin. She wasn't used to running. Her fragile form showed it. "Almost there," Eli muttered, though he wasn't sure where there even was. His only thought was to get them as far from the soldiers as possible. Finally, the alley opened up into the edge of the settlement. Beyond the last line of shacks and tents stretched the desert, an endless expanse of cracked earth and jagged rock formations. Farther still, in the distance, ruins of ancient stone towers rose like broken teeth against the horizon. Eli led her toward the ruins. Few dared to go there. People said the towers were cursed, haunted by the wars of long ago, that made them perfect hiding places. They hurried across the open sand, the sun beating down mercilessly. Behind them, a horn sounded, a long, low note that chilled Eli's blood. The soldiers had discovered something. Maybe the shed, maybe the empty cloak. "They know," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with dread. "Run!" Eli shouted. They sprinted toward the ruins. Each step kicked up clouds of dust. Eli's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. He could almost hear the heavy boots pounding after them, the clatter of armor, the bark of orders. By the time they reached the first broken tower, both were gasping for breath. Eli dragged Lyra inside, into the cool shadows of the ancient stone. The air smelled of age and sand. Cracks split the walls and shafts of sunlight spilled through, painting golden lines across the floor. "Here," Eli said, pulling her into the hollow of a collapsed chamber. "We can hide here until they pass." Lyra sank against the wall, clutching the scarf with both hands. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her eyes wide with fear. Yet beneath the fear, Eli noticed something else, something almost regal in the way she held herself, even in desperation. "Why do they want you so badly?" he asked, voice low. "If they find you, what will they do?" Her eyes flicked to his, then away. For a moment, she seemed older than her years. "They don't want me," she whispered. "They want the power I carry. My blood, it can decide who rules." Eli's mouth went dry. She wasn't just a runaway. She was a key to something bigger, something that could shake entire worlds. Before he could respond, a sound outside froze them both. The echo of boots, the grind of metal against stone. The soldiers had followed their trail. Eli peeked through a crack in the wall, for armored figures moved between the ruins, scanning every shadow with their glowing visors. One raised a scanner that beeped faintly as it passed over sand. "They'll find us," Lyra whispered, her voice breaking. "No," Eli said quickly. "Not if we move deeper." He grabbed her hand again, pulling her through the crumbling hallways of the tower. Dust rained down from above as they slipped through narrow passages, their footsteps muffled by ancient stone. At one point, Lyra stumbled and cried out softly. The sound echoed too loudly. One of the soldiers turned sharply, visor glowing brighter. Eli's pulse raced. They were seconds from discovery. He pushed Lyra through a narrow opening between two slabs of fallen stone, squeezing in after her. The passage was barely wide enough for them both, and the stone scraped against his shoulders. They crouched low, holding their breath as heavy boots crunched nearby. Through the crack, Eli saw the shadow of a soldier passing inches from their hiding spot. The alien paused, visor scanning. For a terrible moment, Eli thought the glow would catch them both. But then the soldier moved on, his heavy steps fading into the distance. Eli let out a shaky breath. Lyra trembled beside him, her face pressed against his arm. He could feel her small frame shivering, though whether from fear or exhaustion he couldn't tell. Slowly, she lifted her eyes to him. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "You don't even know me. If they catch us, they'll kill you too." Eli looked at her, at the fear, and the ruins offered silence for a time. Eli and Lyra stayed hidden in the narrow stone passage until the sound of soldiers faded into the distance. Dust hung in the air, and the faint hum of the wind echoed through cracks in the walls. Eli finally pulled himself out of the passage and offered Lyra his hand. She hesitated, then took it, stepping back into the light. Her lavender skin gleamed faintly under the shafts of sun that pierced the ruins. For a moment, the world felt calm again, but Eli knew it wouldn't last. The soldiers weren't the kind to give up. They would keep searching until they found her. And if anyone in the settlement realized he had been with a strange girl, word would spread quickly. They needed food, they needed water, and they needed to move. "Come on," Eli whispered. "I know a place." He led her out of the ruins and toward a back path that wound along the canyon edge. Few people used it, and it would take them to a quieter part of the settlement. Lyra walked silently beside him, clutching her scarf close. After a long stretch, Eli guided her into a small workshop tucked away behind a collapsed wall. It belonged to an old neighbor, Dark, a grizzled man who repaired farming tools. Eli had known him since he was little. Dark had always been friendly, offering advice, sometimes scraps of food, when Eli's family went hungry. If anyone could be trusted, it was him. "Stay here," Eli told Lyra, easing her inside. "I'll get us some supplies. He won't mind." Lyra's blue eyes scanned the cluttered workshop nervously. "Are you sure?" Eli gave her a reassuring nod before stepping further inside. The air smelled of oil and rust, and old metal parts covered every shelf. Dark emerged from the back, wiping grease from his hands. His bushy eyebrows rose when he saw Eli. "Boy," he grunted, "what are you doing sneaking in here?" Eli tried to sound casual. "Needed a place to rest. Things are busy in the streets." Dark's eyes narrowed. "Busy, eh? Has to do with the soldiers hunting some runaway." Eli stiffened. His heartbeat thudded. He forced a shrug. "I don't know anything about that." But Dark was sharp. His gaze drifted past Eli, toward the shadows where Lyra stood half-hidden. And in that instant, Eli knew the truth. Dark had seen her. The old man's face hardened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Eli, do you know what you've done? That girl isn't just trouble. She's death for you and your whole family." Eli instinctively moved in front of Lyra. "She hasn't hurt anyone. She's just a child." "A child?" Dark scoffed. "You think the patrols are turning this place upside down for nothing? She's marked, boy. Something royal, maybe. I've seen that kind before." His voice lowered further, almost a whisper. "There's a bounty on her head. Enough to feed a family for a year. Enough to make a poor man rich." Eli's stomach dropped. He could see it in Dark's eyes, the temptation, the calculation. The neighbor he had trusted was already weighing the value of betrayal. "You wouldn't," Eli said, his voice shaking. But Dark's gaze slid toward the door. "If the soldiers knew I had seen her, and I said nothing, they'd take me instead. You think I'd risk my neck for a girl like her?" Panic surged in Eli's chest. He grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to go," he hissed. But it was too late. Outside, heavy boots were already approaching. Voices shouted in the alien tongue. Dark had given them away. Lyra's face went pale. Her trembling fingers clutched Eli's tighter. "Out the back," Eli urged, pulling her toward the rear of the workshop. They pushed past shelves of rusted metal and spilled bolts, stumbling into the alley. But the soldiers were fast. Two of them turned the corner, their glowing visors locking onto the fleeing children. "There!" one shouted. Eli's heart raced. They sprinted through the alley, but the sound of armored boots thundered behind them. Energy weapons crackled, bolts of light striking the walls. Dust exploded around them, stinging Eli's eyes. "Keep running," he shouted, dragging Lyra with him. But she stumbled again, nearly falling. Her scarf slipped from her hands, the golden crest flashing in the light before she grabbed it back. For an instant, the soldiers froze, recognition in their movements. "It's her," one barked. "The heir." The word sent a shock through Eli. Heir. Not just royalty. Not just important. She was the heir. They reached the end of the alley, only to find more soldiers blocking the path. Surrounded, Eli's chest heaved, his mind spinning. He had no weapon, no plan, only his body, his courage, and the girl whose secret had just changed everything. The soldiers raised their weapons, glowing with deadly light. Lyra clung to Eli's side, whispering through trembling lips, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring this on you." Eli gritted his teeth. Fear clawed at him, but he forced himself to stand tall, stepping in front of her. "If they want you," he whispered to her, "they'll have to go through me first." And for the first time, Lyra didn't look only frightened. She looked at him with something else, something close to hope. The alley was a trap. Soldiers blocked the front and the back, their glowing visors fixed on Eli and Lyra. Energy weapons hummed, the faint whine of charge bolts filling the air. Eli's hands shook, but he pushed Lyra behind him, his heart hammering like a drum. The commander stepped forward, tall and armored, his voice like grinding metal. "Give us the girl, human. Step aside and live." Eli's mouth was dry, but his voice came out firm. "No." A pause hung in the air. The soldiers seemed almost amused. One of them laughed bitterly. "Fool! You'd die for her." Eli clenched his fists. He had no weapon, no shield, no armor. just himself. But he thought of her shivering in the market, her terrified eyes, her whispered question, "Why would a human help me?" And he knew his answer was simple. Because he could not abandon her. The commander's visor gleamed. Then die. The first shot fired. A blast of energy streaked through the air, smashing into the wall near Eli's head. Dust and shard of stone rained down. Lyra cried out, clutching his cloak. Instinct took over. Eli grabbed a broken metal rod from the ground and swung it wildly, forcing back the nearest soldier. Sparks flew as the rod struck armor. The soldier stumbled but didn't fall. Eli swung again, raw desperation giving him strength. "Run!" he shouted to Lyra. But she didn't run. She stood frozen, trembling, her scarf clutched tightly. Her eyes glowed faintly in the shadows, brighter than before. Something stirred inside her, something she had tried to hide. As another soldier lunged, Eli shoved him back, but the energy spear grazed his arm, burning through his sleeve. Pain seared his skin, and he staggered, teeth clenched. He wouldn't last long. Then he heard her voice, soft at first, then rising like a clear note in the chaos. "Stop." The word echoed not just in the alley, but inside the very air, vibrating through stone and dust. The soldiers froze, their weapons trembling. Eli turned. Lyra stood tall now, her small frame glowing faintly with light. Her scarf slipped from her shoulders, revealing the golden crest fully. Her blue eyes shone with a power that was both terrifying and beautiful. "I am not your prisoner," she said, her voice shaking but filled with command. "I am of the royal line. You will not touch me." For a moment, silence held the alley. The soldiers shifted uneasily. The commander's visor flickered, as if processing what he was seeing. Eli stared in shock. This wasn't the trembling, shivering girl he had found in the market. This was someone else, fragile, yes, but carrying a presence that made armored soldiers hesitate. But the commander recovered quickly. "You think words will save you, child?" His voice cut cold. "The crown may claim you, but here, your blood means nothing." He raised his weapon again. The hesitation was gone. Lyra gasped, her strength faltering. The glow dimmed. She stumbled, her small hand clutching Eli's arm for balance. Whatever power she had touched, it was fragile, slipping away as quickly as it had come. The soldiers advanced. Eli's chest heaved. He had seen the truth now. She was royalty, an heir, hunted not just for who she was, but for what she could mean to rulers and armies. And yet, she was still only a child. He stepped forward, rod gripped tight in his hands, planting himself between her and the soldiers. His voice shook but stayed steady. "If you want her, you'll have to kill me first." The soldiers charged. Eli swung with everything he had, blocking one spear, dodging another. He fought not with skill but with pure will, the desperation of someone with nothing left but defiance. Every strike was met with sparks, every movement leaving his body screaming with pain. Behind him, Lyra cried his name, but Eli didn't back down. Even as the commander raised his weapon for a killing blow, Eli forced himself to stand tall, blood on his arm, dust in his eyes, fire in his chest. And then, just before the strike landed, a new sound cut through the chaos, a roar of engines, the crack of rifles. Figures burst into the alley from the rooftops in shadows, firing on the soldiers. The ambush scattered the patrol, forcing them back. Eli blinked in shock. Men and women, human and alien alike, moved with precision, their weapons flashing. Rebels. One of them, a tall woman with a scar across her cheek, shouted over the noise, "Get the girl! Protect the air!" Eli's breath caught. They knew who Lyra was, and they had come for her. The commander snarled, retreating under the sudden assault. His visor locked on Eli one last time. "You cannot hide her forever. Boy, she belongs to us." Then the soldiers pulled back, vanishing into the smoke and dust. The rebels closed in around Eli and Lyra. The scarred woman knelt, placing a steady hand on the girl's shoulder. "You're safe now, princess." Lyra's lips trembled, her glow fading. She leaned against Eli, whispering, "I didn't want you to know, but now you see why they'll never stop." Eli's arms ached, his chest burned, but his voice was steady. Then I'll never stop either. I'll protect you, no matter what. And as the rebels prepared to move, Lyra looked at him with eyes that held both fear and something new, trust. The ruins still echoed with the clash of battle as Eli stumbled after the rebels, half dragging, half guiding Lyra through the broken towers. Smoke from energy blasts lingered in the air, mixing with the desert dust. His arm throbbed where the soldier's spear had grazed him, but he pushed the pain aside. His only thought was keeping Lyra on her feet. The rebels moved swiftly, practiced, leading them deeper into the ruins where patrols rarely ventured. Finally, they reached an ancient chamber, its roof open to the blazing sky. Broken pillars lay scattered across the ground, but here the noise of the soldiers faded into the distance. The scarred woman who had commanded the rebels turned sharply to Eli. "You, human boy, do you understand what you've done?" Eli straightened, meeting her eyes even though his body screamed for rest. "I saved her. That's all." The woman studied him for a long moment. Then her hard expression softened. "More than saved. You've carried the heir of a fallen thrown into our hands." Lyra stood nearby, clutching her scarf. Her lavender skin was streaked with dirt, her silver hair tangled. But even now she looked radiant, fragile and royal at once. Her voice was quiet. "You knew who I was?" The woman nodded. "We've been searching for you for weeks, Princess. You are the last of your line. With you, we can rally the people against the occupiers." The word hung heavy in the air, Princess. Eli had guessed, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. He glanced at Lyra, who avoided his gaze, her small hands tightening around the golden-stitched fabric. "I don't want to be a symbol," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to survive." The woman's tone was firm but respectful. "Survival is not enough, not when your blood carries hope. The soldiers will never stop hunting you. But if you lead, if you stand, they will fear you." Lyra's eyes glistened. She turned to Eli, her voice breaking. "I don't want this. I didn't ask for it." Eli's heart twisted. He saw not a princess, not an heir, but the same shivering girl he had found in the market, hiding from a world. She was still a child, yet the weight of an empire was being placed on her shoulders. "You don't have to decide right now," Eli said gently. "But you can't give up, not if it means they win." The rebels began preparing to move, gathering weapons and scanning the skies for patrols. But before they could leave, a terrible sound thundered through the ruins, the heavy roar of an armored transport ship. Shadows swept over the chamber as the craft descended, its engines blasting dust into the air. The soldiers had found them. The chamber erupted in chaos. Rebels scrambled for cover as energy fire rained down. The commander himself leapt from the transport, his armor gleaming like a blade in the sun. His voice cut through the smoke. "Surrender the heir. The rest may live." Lyra froze, fear locking her in place. Eli grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. You're stronger than you think. They don't just fear your blood, they fear you." "But I can't," she began. "Yes, you can," Eli interrupted. "I've seen it. Back in the alley, when you spoke and they stopped. You have power. Use it. Not for them. Not even for the rebels. For yourself." Her blue eyes locked on his. For the first time, he didn't just see fear. He saw resolve. The commander advanced, weapon raised. Eli stepped forward, ready to fight again, but Lyra pushed past him. She stood tall, scarf flowing in the desert wind, her small frame glowing faintly with light. Her voice rang out, strong and clear. "I am Lyra of the royal line. You will not take me." The commander hesitated, visor flickering. The air seemed to vibrate as her words carried through the ruins, echoing off stone. Soldiers faltered, their weapons lowering slightly. Even the transport ship seemed to tremble under the force of her will. The commander roared in defiance and charged. But before his strike could land, a blast of light surged from Lyra's hands, raw, untrained, but powerful. The energy struck his armor, throwing him back into the dust. Silence followed. The soldiers stared, shaken. None dared move against her now. The rebels seized a moment, pressing forward and driving the enemy back toward their transport. Shouts filled the air as the occupiers retreated, unwilling to face the power of the air. When the dust cleared, only the rebels, Eli and Lyra, remained. She swayed on her feet, drained from the burst of energy. Eli caught her before she fell. "You did it," he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open, filled with tears. "I couldn't have without you." The scarred woman approached, bowing her head slightly. "Princess, your path will be dangerous. But today, you proved you are more than a symbol. You are hope." Lyra leaned against Eli, her voice small but steady. "I don't want to walk it alone." Eli squeezed her hand. "Then you won't. Wherever this leads, I'll be there." For a long moment, the two children, one human, one alien royal, stood together in the ruins, bound not by blood or duty, but by the choice Eli had made in the market, to protect her when no one else would. The sun blazed down, harsh and bright. But for the first time since it began, the light felt less like fire and more like promise. And though Eli could not see the future, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning.